The astronauts of Crew 5 taking their first steps outside as they head to the pad. And there they go. The rocket recline. There it is.
And I like the way they did it kind of in coordination.
And here we go, the first two astronauts to board Crew Dragon. On the left, Josh Cassada, and on the right, Commander Nicole Mann. And here come our second two astronauts, mission specialists, Koichi Wakata and Anna Keegan.
On behalf of all the crew, to our families and friends, it is your love and support that help make dreams come true. Now let's do this. Crew 5 displays are configured for launch.
3, 2, 1. Space separation first, copy 2 Alpha.
And there is separation.
Right, separation confirmed.
Our Crew 5, call this little guy our free fall indicator. We're here to tell you that there's plenty of gravity up here. In fact, that's what's keeping us in orbit right now.
The moon in the farthest portion of your screen there, the furthest back circle, Dragon in the middle, and the International Space Station in the closest field of view, of course, with our pale blue dot underneath.
U6 on the big loop, contact and soft capture complete. Continuation in progress.
Here we come through. First one through the hatch is going to be Nicole Mann, commander of Dragon. Next one through the hatch is Josh Cassada, the pilot of Dragon. Koichi Wakata of JAXA coming through the hatch. And last but not least, Anna Keegan of Roscosmos just entered the International Space Station. And Crew 5 is officially ingressed from Dragon Endurance into their home for the next 6 months, the International Space Station.
So after 29 hours in orbit, we're finally on board, and now it's time to get to work. So of course, our main objective while on board is the science that we execute. And a lot of the sciences are our own bodies, to figure out how we can learn to take care of the astronauts in space and for deep space travel. This is Astrobee, which is technology development, little flying robots that can help the astronauts doing some missions. We also grew yeast and yogurt on board Space Station, and this is for future sustained presence on the lunar surface and eventually to Mars. Now you know, because we're in a microgravity environment, there's no heat gradients, there's no gravity gradients, so a lot of research that we can do on material sciences, properties behave differently in water, and we get a chance to work with the principal investigators on the ground. We also launched quite a few satellites, CubeSats, when we were on station, including the first CubeSats from Uganda. And this information that we gather about our planet not only helps us learn how to operate in space, but also the importance of taking care of our own planet.
We did a variety of plant growth experiments, plant habitat. I think there are a lot of scientists and researchers here in the KSC. The plants that go through this stress of a space environment will have some external information addition to the DNA, and the research is to check if this effect of the microgravity or space stress will be transmitted through seas to the next generation. And we also conducted a variety of tests of closed loop plant growth experiments for continuous growth of plants in space. We also did a variety of future Luna and Mars mission application technology, like a demonstration of a new technology of a water recycle system. This is a radiation monitoring system that we use for a spacewalk, and Josh is working on a biofabrication facility The bioprinting technology on the ground has come a long way, but because of this gravity, it's very difficult to produce those human organs on the ground because of gravity. But using microgravity, we are testing the new technology of biofabrication. And on the outside of the spaceship, we have basic physics experiments, like alpha magnetic spectrometer experiment, and also called Atom Lab to test the, to know the properties of basic particle physics. So Nicole said we had 5 total US EVAs in preparation and also installation of the new solar arrays, IROSA. That's the solar array that have about 20% of the conventional the weight of compared to the conventional solar arrays, and then also produce about 20 to 30% more power compared to the legacy solar arrays. Nicole and I are at the control of the robotic arm. Josh is holding on to this 700-pound IROSA, and we needed to have a close coordination between the robotics operator and the EVA space focus, Frank and Josh, in order to not to hit the structure of the station and carefully move the station. And now Josh and Frank are working on the capture, soft capture mechanism of the solar arrays to install it. It was a very challenging task, but the development of the IROSA is a marvel of engineering of the deployable solar arrays and the planning, procedure development, execution, and also the mission control from the ground. We needed to have a huge team of the teamwork, and because of the wonderful and excellent teamwork, we were able to accomplish those challenging tasks of solar arrays installation. And after that, Nicole and I went out to do the preparation for the follow-on activities.
So after the first 3 EVAs, which were a series, it was now time for Koichi and I to go out the door, which is a great privilege. There you can see the solar array deploying from the previous EVA. And so we went out now to install the mod kit, which is the support structure for the EVAs that were just installed by Expedition 69 on board station pretty recently. So on the first EVA, we had a problem with one of the mid-struts. There was some hardware interference, and we weren't able to get that mid-strut installed. In fact, we ran out of time on the EVA, 7.5 hours, and had to come inside and bring the mid-strut with us back inside. Fortunately, the team had been working on troubleshooting techniques, and so they said, hey, next week, we want you to go out the door again. We've got some ideas where to get that mid-strut installed. And here, after many hours of trying and attempting, we finally, working together, got that mid-strut installed. So it was a huge accomplishment for the entire team. We got a couple selfies there right prior to coming back inside the door. Now, the cosmonauts had some EVAs planned as well, and Anya was going to fly the new ESA robotic arm. Unfortunately, while Sergei and Dima were suited up about to go out the door, this is when we had the leak on the external cooling loop of the Soyuz spacecraft. So that EVA got canceled. We were safe on board because this was just an external cooling loop, but of course it put into question the integrity of that spacecraft and its ability to keep the astronauts safe and cool on and undock and re-entry. So because of that, after a lot of discussions and amazing work by teams here on the ground, we actually ended up taking Frank's seat liner from Soyuz, removing a bunch of struts that were never supposed to be removed in Dragon, and installing his seat in case we needed to do an emergency departure. Beyond all that work, we also have a lot of maintenance to do. So I'm sure you all know when you're on board space station, if the toilet fixes, breaks, you're the plumber. If the computers go down, you're the IT person. A little bit of everything. And also some maintenance for things that break, but also a lot of maintenance in demonstrating this new technology. So this is 4-bed CO2 scrubber that we installed and significantly improves the ability to scrub CO2 from the atmosphere. Of course, it's important for space station, but now as we look towards the moon, Artemis, and eventually Mars, this technology, the more efficient, the smaller, the more reliable it is, the better.
So Nicole and Josh are now working on the replacement of a fan pump separator of the EMU, the spacewalk unit. And since the pump is so small and also there's very tiny washers and screws, it's really difficult to do this in zero gravity. So they needed to prepare for like a small vacuum cleaner in case the something floating particles comes out. And so with the ground help, we had the cameras installed so that the Mission Control Center can help the crew members to do this very complicated maintenance task of the pump separator. This was needed because obviously the pump was failed, and for the future EVAs, they needed to replace them. And then after this very pristine operation of the maintenance, we were able to use that EMU again. And we also did a lot of stowage relocation in the B module, as well as the NanoRacks airlock. Frank and I have been working on this one. And this is Frank's maintenance activity of replacing some components of the microgravity science glove box located in the lab. So you open the rack and go into access the backside of the microgravity science glove box, replacing the units, and then now he's returning that the microgravity science glove into the nominal location. On board the space station, we have about 2 hours of exercise time using this resistive exercise device. And then this is very important, and Nicole is now working on a treadmill. And you know, a lot of us like exercise aerobic exercise using this treadmill, and also like Frank is doing the cycloergometer exercise. And then also in the Russian segment, Anya is now working on the treadmill for the treadmill exercise. So Nicole and Josh are using the drill to demonstrate the fun in zero gravity. And I'm a big fan of baseball. I'm not a Shohei Ohtani, but in space you can throw a pitch and fly right away. And then actually you can hit the ball. And not only that, you can still fly faster than the ball and catch the ball. Here we go with a real flight command. And Josh, look at his socks, like the Superman. It is so impressive.
So of course we play microgravity because it's microgravity and it's amazing. This is simply a ball of water that we squirted out of a bag. Because of the surface tension, it's going to form this sphere. We put in some food coloring and Alka-Seltzer to see what would happen. You can see the balls forming just in the middle. So then I decided to smash my face into the ball to see what would happen. And it sticks to your face like that. Film. You can't tell that it's so thin. But I had forgotten that we put the Alka-Seltzer in the ball. So it goes right up my nose.
So in space you can shave using the regular manual shaver or electrical shaver. Only difference is that we only have about a gallon of water per person per day you can use, and majority of that is for your drinking. So we have a very limited amount of water, but we were able to keep ourselves clean. And holidays we enjoyed it. And Nicole is a big fan of coffee, and usually we have to use straw to drink any liquid. But here is this Scott Paddet's. You mentioned on this the cup using the capillary effect of the liquid, and now you can see how tasty that is looking at her smile. And Josh is now in the cupola module. This is one of the favorite places on board the space station. And Nicole is ready to go to her crew quarters to sleep, and then this is how we go into the crew quarters. There are 4 crew quarters in an O2 module, and strapped in a sleeping bag. It's very comfy. And as I said, the cupola is one of the favorite places that we stay on the space station. The view from here is amazing with the 7 big windows. And during the daytime, this is the nighttime, you can see the beautiful aurora. This Nicole and Josh one night found that this wonderful aurora is coming out over North America, and they took pictures, beautiful pictures of aurora borealis over Canada and in North America using intervalometry picture. This is over Japan. You can see, the city lights are so impressive, and the view in the daytime, I really feel the power of the nature, looking at the eruption of the volcanoes, water currents on the ocean, the clouds. And but at night, what's very impressive to me is the lights of the city lights, and I am really convinced how much energy that we consume as human society. And so the impression of the day view and the night view of the Earth is completely different. And we go around the Earth every 90 minutes. It is amazing to see these beautiful phenomena, aurora borealis over Canada, and then it's amazing eddy currents of the clouds over volcanoes, and it is an amazing view. And how precious this is. We do a lot of Earth observation to understand and to gather data and information to protect our home planet.
We had a few cargo vehicles while we're on board. Of course, they bring up all of the science, all of our food, all of our clothing. And so the two that we had were the Cygnus Sally Ride, and that is a vehicle that we still capture with a robotic arm. So Josh and I practiced flying the robotic arm for many weeks leading up to it, and then we captured Sally Ride. Cygnus is huge. I didn't realize. She's like the size of the lab. And they actually just birthed the space station, and there's so much cargo on board, including those mod kit that Koichi and I took out the door to install on space station. So on top of the Sally Ride, of course, just like here at KSC, there's a huge team of folks. This is a Northrop Grumman Cygnus that work with getting the spacecraft safely to the station. This spacecraft, NG-18, it had the solar array that didn't deploy. So there was a long time we thought we were going to lose that spacecraft. That would have caused major food issues on board station, but the team was able to conserve and cut down a lot of the power. Unfortunately, we lost some science, but we still got the spacecraft on board. And then, of course, we also had a Dragon, SpaceX 26 cargo Dragon, again brought food and science, and that is docked to space station. Once that comes on board, many days of a lot of cargo up.
So it was a very quick and busy 5 months stay on board the station. It's time for us to pack and leave the space station on the Crew Dragon. And this is the moment of undocking. From this moment, it was about 19 hours on the facing to splashdown off the coast of Tampa here. And the view of the ISS was awesome, looking from the crew module. And then Nicole and Josh had control the monitoring of the spacecraft. And during the re-entry, of course, you can see the plasma, heated air outside through the window. Parachute deployment is really dynamic. And then I had a privilege to land on the shuttle at the shuttle landing facility on the shuttle. And I thought that the splashdown will be more impactful, but actually it was really smooth. And then you see a light touch. But for me, the parachute deployment was so dynamic. It was like the best roller coaster I've ever had. And thanks to the great folks of the SpaceX and the recovery team, we were able to come out really quickly, probably about like 30-40 minutes after splashdown, and then all of us were able to come out to the boat, and then we flew back actually on the helicopter to the KSC, and then from here we took a JSC flight back to Ellington Field. So that was our 157 days of Crew 5 mission to the space station.
Incredible that you can fit 5 months into about 10 minutes and recap all of that. It's really extraordinary to hear about everything you're able to do and some of the challenges that you don't think about just being geographically remote, how you're able to kind of overcome those and work with different teams across the agency that overcome some of those obstacles. So thank you for sharing that with us. We now have an opportunity to ask questions. We're going to open it up to you, the audience. So if you would like to ask a question, you would raise your hand. We have a couple of facilitators who are here to bring a microphone. If you would just state your name and then who you are directing your question to, and if you would keep it.
What do you think? This is a test. Wait, that's your stool.
If only there was an engineer.
I'll make this one.
I'll just stand.
We can stay.
It's a terrible game of musical chairs.
Good check. She is very sharp.
So we will be taking questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. We have somebody who will come bring a microphone, state your name, and then if you would please state who the question is being directed to. And we would like to get through as many questions as possible, so if you could limit questions to one per person, and then we can go back through and cycle again. So who would like to ask the first question? Okay, right over here.
morning. Thank you for being here. And question for Koichi. Koichi, thanks for that clip on baseball. I'm a big baseball fan. Appreciate you doing that, and hopefully showing Apotani will see that too. Question is, you did mention a little bit about landing, the comparison of landing space shuttle and versus landing on water. That was good that you shared that, especially some of us some here in the audience are never seen this space shuttle landing, so you were able to share that. However, I do have a question regarding the docking. So when you dock, how would you compare the docking maneuvers from the shuttle versus the docking from the capsule?
Yeah, of course, Dragon is a very automated spacecraft, even compared to with the shuttle and the Soyuz. I had a privilege to dock on the shuttle 3 times, and my commander was flying the vehicle manually. And space shuttle is a pretty heavy spacecraft, and then at the impact, at the docking moment of docking, it was just very, very slow thump, and it was very stable. And then so only difference is spacecraft like a Soyuz or a Dragon are much lighter, so it goes a little faster than a shuttle. But as far as the the impact or the vibration or anything, it's pretty much the same. But it's amazing. Nicole and Josh were monitoring the system, but everything worked great on the automated the sequence of the docking. So it was a very smooth docking. It's 29 hours ascent from the launch from the Kennedy Space Center to the docking. It was 29 hours, and then we were able to sleep very well inside of a spacecraft. And that was not the case. Shuttle was pretty busy. As soon as we go into the orbit, first we have to take a picture of the external tank, and then we had to deploy the Ku-band antenna and then radiators of the payload bay doors and stuff like that. We were so busy on board the space shuttle before we docked to the space station. But Dragon is very, very simplified, automated spacecraft. So the ride there to the space station was really smooth and much, I think, more comfortable in my mind. Thank you.
Next question. And we'll go right here. And then this gentleman over here immediately following.
Hi, my name is Casey. First and foremost, I want to say thank you so much for sharing more about your journey up in space. That was really cool to hear some of the details. So my question, it could be for either one of you, whoever has a better answer, whatever your experience is. My question is actually more relating to kind of the weeks and months leading up to your journey, and then weeks and months returning back to Earth. Did you work with athletic trainers to physically prepare yourself for changes in gravity to and from? And if you did, what was that physical training like, and what was that experience like working with athletic trainers?
Yeah, so we have ACERs, the Astronaut Strength and Conditioning Rehabilitation coaches at NASA, and we work very closely with them prior to flight in a general workout. Also, a lot of training specifically for EVA. That takes a lot of strength, shoulder strength, and strength in your hands, and a lot so that you don't injure yourself. So you need to have the proper muscles developed for that. And then on board, as soon as you're on board, I think day 3, we already start working out on ARED, the resistance device, the bicycle, as well as the treadmill. When you come back, absolutely, we have 45 days dedicated every day with the trainer, and that's 2 hours to get your muscles are very strong when you come back because you've been working out, but those little muscles like in your neck and in your back, your hips, those have been asleep essentially for 5.5 months. So it takes a lot of time to also retrain your agility. So your vestibular system is completely out of whack for quite some time. We do this kind of agility course when we first get back. And, I'm falling over the place. Now, Koichi, he's been in space 5 times, right? He's like, no problem. I'm falling all over the place. And each week it gets a little bit better. But when I would accelerate, I would either put too much effort or not enough, And then at about 30 days, I came around the cone and my feet went choo-choo-choo, and I was like, yes, good job, feet. So it just takes a while for your systems to get back.
But on board the exercise device like ARED that you saw in the video, it's an amazing system, to keep, for us to be able to maintain a strength, especially for spacewalks. So it's an amazing equipment, but it's huge. So for future missions, how we can make something like that efficient and that powerful, so that we can stay very healthy if we have to go outside for a spacewalk. We need to have certain strength, especially on the upper body. So what we have is wonderful, but I think it's going to be challenging and to make similar to equipment for future missions.
Thank you.
And I think we had a question over here on this side.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. My name's Gil, and I'm just interested in, whoever wants to respond to this question, your interactions with the crowd production of the plant experiments up on the station. How did that affect your overall performance, or did it just your time up on station?
Yes, so great question. The veggie experiment, probably many of you are involved in that. I think it's very important for us to have this continuous food production system, especially for a long duration flight to Mars. So that's what we're doing that, especially the zero gravity is really difficult. But this one we tested the light quality and fertilizer differences, right, in order to see the effect of these parameters for the growth. And then not only that, and also it's good to be able to consume something. Unfortunately, we during our flight we were not able to consume, and actually Frank, I think, or somebody harvested it, and then somehow we lost a couple of them. And I swear it was not me who consumed it. It's gone. But anyway, so it's very important to be able to have this fresh food. And it's just wonderful to be able to have something fresh because we don't have salad on board the space station. So psychologically, I think it's very important to have fresh food production. And it's just great to see some living creatures inside of the space station. Not only plants, but maybe, we had ants in, my flight in 10 years ago. Something like that is always wonderful to have something. And then, looking at the green, and that is psychologically very, I think, motivational boost up our morale. So I think there are some psychological effect having green on board the space station.
Dude, a lot of times before I went to bed too, we had a hygiene station up in GLP, and then I would come back to crew quarters, where our crew quarters are in No. 2. So I would go by Columbus, and you just pull down the bellow a little bit, and you can smell the green, and it smells like grass, and it's so awesome compared to the smell on station.
I think that might be the only time you're excited to see ants in your workstation.
Thank you so much.
Next question, please. See this one right up here, and then let's see a second hand go up, raise them high, and then we'll go to this question over here. Here on the front row, Mr. Honeycutt.
Hello, my name is Michi. I just started here at NASA in January, so I'm pretty excited. It's the first event I got to come to. So my question for you, or either one of you, I guess either Nicole, you said that you studied mechanical engineering right in school, like for your undergrad and then for your master's degree, and yet you get on the space station, right, and you're doing biology, botany, electrical engineering, and a ton of different things. So how is that transition? Like, did you ever anticipate that you were going to be growing plants? I know I can't keep the plants alive.
Fortunately, we have a lot of help from the ground to keep them alive. But no, it's a great question because I didn't really anticipate that. And I think the important thing about whatever you study in undergrad or grad school, if it's mechanical engineering or aero or structural, that doesn't really matter. If you're going to go into a specialty field, perhaps, but really the theory and the concept behind learning something new and applying scientific method is all the same. So really that's what you're learning. And the great thing about being an astronaut is you're trained for so many things across the board. A lot of what we're trained for is to be able to do something you've never done before, to read a procedure, talk to somebody on the ground, and figure out, translate what they're saying to actual actions, know when to stop, when to ask a question. And then a lot of training on, fixing, doing the maintenance. And so NASA gives you all that experience while you're on the ground. So like when Josh and I did the fan pump separator, we had trained a little bit with these little tiny bolts that are not captive and float around everywhere. But it was through this kind of methodical practical approach to everything, that's what you really learn and I think carry on.
Yeah, for the on the shuttle days, because missions were so short, so we were trained for each specific task, like a task-oriented training. But on board the station, we spent there for 6 months. If you go to Mars, it's 2.5 years or something. So we cannot have each tasks, we cannot learn 100%. So we need to have basic skills, and we need to be able to, as Nicole said, we need to be able to apply our skills to each one of those tasks. So I think I've been an astronaut for a long time, but it's like a student forever. We go through classes and then simulators, and we get tested, and then but each time you learn something new. But at the same time, what you're learning is not exactly what you're going to use on board the spaces. What you have learned in the process is something that you can apply to your future unknown tasks that you may be involved.
Thank you.
And then right over here.
Hi, I'm Lucy McCummins, I'm the chair of NAMI, but my question is just mild curiosity. So I know the food is different for you guys on the space station. You're able to do the greens and stuff that you're growing, right? And how does that affect you when you come back to Earth? Does it affect your digestive system badly or transition well?
Yeah, no, I didn't have any digestive problems. I was very excited, to have this awesome, amazing dinner. But I didn't feel very good for the first couple days, and really the first 2 weeks. I was just very tired. You're just so heavy, and you're anemic because you haven't been making all your red blood cells. Your blood volume is low. Your head is so heavy, and so you're exhausted. So that first dinner, I was so excited, steak dinner, and I was like, oh, I need to fall asleep. But then about 2 weeks after that, my favorite, I think, was vegetables and fruits, and I would make a sandwich. It would be like lettuce and pickles and anything I could find that I would put on top of it, something crunchy and fresh,
And also, I love Coke and stuff like that, the bubbly drinks. On board the station, we cannot have them because it has CO2 in it, right? We need to have a CO2 removal system to take it out. So I cannot have the soda, and so I really long for those, sparkling water and stuff like that. So I had a lot of them. Actually, on the boat, my flight surgeon brought me a Japanese rice cracker and a Diet Coke. So.
So well balanced. Let's see, next question. Raise them high, guys, so I can see them. We have, we'll actually take these 3 in a row since you guys are all on the same side.
Hi, my name is Connor. Actually an intern this summer. I was just wondering, have you always dreamt of becoming an astronaut? And if so, what steps did you take to bring that dream to life?
When did I enter? Yeah, so I'm old man, probably one of the oldest here. But I saw the Apollo 11 landing when I was 5 years old, and I had a longing for going to space. But at the time, there was no Japanese astronaut. We did not have a space program at that time even. So I thought it was beyond my reach to be able to work in space. But thanks to the international cooperation of the Space Station program, I was sent over to Houston to train as a shuttle mission specialist to serve for the assembly missions of the space station. So I had a strong longing for flying in space, but with the U.S. leadership and inviting the international partners for the space program, I was never going to be able to fly in space. So I really am thankful to the leadership of this country, inviting the partners. And with this international partnership, we're going not only beyond low Earth orbit, but beyond low Earth orbit to the moon and beyond. So I'm really thankful for that. But I am really happy because I had a strong longing when I saw the Apollo 11. So I don't know how much of influence that mission had, not only for this country, but for the entire world. So I'm so grateful.
For me, it wasn't until a little bit later on in life. I think as a kid, I was always interested in math and science and fascinated by the space and astronauts. But to be honest, I'd never met an astronaut. I didn't really know what they did. They seemed like something that other people did, I grew up in Northern California, and I had a strong interest to serve in the military. So it wasn't until I was flying fighter jets in the Marine Corps that I was looking at my next follow-on set of orders that I first realized, oh, being an astronaut is something that is in the realm of possibilities for me. I don't know why I didn't realize that before, but I'm glad that I did.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Riley, I'm also an intern. My question comes with like the psychological challenges of being far away from home. I've had an opportunity to work overseas for a while, and that was very taxing. You know, being so far away, not being able to be in anywhere near familiar. And I'm curious, like, what are your personal practices, whether book, music, meditation? Like, what do you do to keep yourself mentally grounded when you're literally the furthest away from home possible?
Yeah, it's very important that you take care of the mental aspects, you know, the physical aspects of your body, yes, but the mental aspect of it as well. And we've learned a lot over time that people can feel really isolated in space. So we actually have a great system to stay connected. Wonderful email. I mean, better than my early deployments in the military, much better connectivity. So we've come a long way. But email, you can pick up, and telephone, as long as you have KU coverage, you can call down. And then once a week, you can do essentially a FaceTime with your family. And that's even being improved in this most recent expedition. There's like a secure type of, it's called Doxy. It's like a medical web base that you can call almost anybody with that. So that's really being improved. It's important that you take your time. You're with your crewmates. There's 7 of us on board. It's very tight quarters. You have your crew quarters, which is the size of like a telephone booth. That's your own little personal space. So it's important that you take time, spend time alone in the cupola, looking at the planet. Spend time, you know, just reading a book or whatever it is that you like to do. In the beginning, it's very comfortable to sleep in space because you're just floating. But in the beginning, I had a hard time falling asleep because my brain was just, right, there's so much that I had to do, I just couldn't turn my brain off. And so I did a sleep meditation, and it was just a Peloton audio sleep meditation. And I don't know if anybody does that, but Ross Rayburn, I used to listen to him before the mission. So I had Ross Rayburn sleep meditation, and they do this nice music. It's like, you know, relax your body, your mind, and all this. Pretend like you're floating in space. I am floating in space. So after that, I was like, okay, I don't need it, and I was able to.
And food is very important. You know, I love food, and then as you know, as we explained a little bit, that we have thermally stabilized food and like freeze-dried food items, but sometimes we have like fresh food, like cheese, and those are very important to share with the crewmates. And then whenever we had visiting vehicles like SpaceX Cargo Dragon or Cygnus spacecraft, they kindly launched some ice cream, so kind of 7 of us gathering together and having ice cream together. So these kind of things, food is very important to keep our morale up.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is also Connor, and I'm also an intern. Kind of in the same vein as Riley's question, I was curious about sort of interpersonal conflicts between crewmates and how you guys work those out. Do you guys, are you guys like, trained on that? Do you have like mediators that on the ground that you can contact? I guess likewise, if there's a problem at home, a family member is sick or passes away, are you guys trained on how to handle that, how to deal with that emotionally and mentally?
Yeah, we're lucky, you know, like to be able to, you know, work and live with this, crew members, family members, and we have a lot of like expeditionary behavior type training on the ground before we go to space, you know, having camp in Wyoming, and you know, those cold and warm weather, and underwater off the coast of Key Largo and Aquarius facilities. And so we have a variety of like expeditionary group dynamics training before we go to space. So those are very helpful. And I think it's very important to know the crew members before we fly in space, and we spend much time training together. And you know, for SpaceX Dragon training, we go to California to train together. When we launch from you know, Kazakhstan, you know, we have training you know, in the NASA cottages in Russia many months. And so this kind of, you know, spending time together is very important to have this camaraderie and teamwork skills, you know, brushed up. So I think I've been lucky to be able to go through this training. And then, you know, as a result, I've been really lucky to be able to fly with a wonderful crews and crew commander, and then, you know, crewmates. And I was the only experienced crew members, but on this crew fly mission. But 3, you know, first-time flyers, they're like all, you know, very matured astronauts, and I could not believe that I was, you know, able to fly with this kind of talented people. So I was very lucky to be able to fly, and then I never experienced this kind of, you know, interpersonal challenges. But even if we could encounter that kind of situation, we already have learned how to cope with these kind of situations.
you do a lot of debriefing, even the day. Sometimes you'll debrief, you know, if you were doing some maintenance tasks, it didn't go so well. Maybe, you know, some of you got frustrated, you just talk about it right away. I mean, everybody's a little bit different too, and so like Koichi's point of knowing your crewmate. So, you know, for example, if we're doing something that's very stressful, maybe I know my crewmate's behavior when he's getting stressed out, and I realize, oh, he's just stressed out, he's not pissed off at me, right? And so you talk about those things. We also have support of psychologists while we're on board. So every 2 weeks you meet with the psych docs, and they talk to you, and they also have extended support for your family at home, because if your family is struggling, you know, I have an 11-year-old boy and my husband, and they're just the two of them back on the planet, like, go for it. You know, that can be very stressful. And so if I call down from them and they're stressed out, now that's gonna make me stressed out. I'm not gonna be able to stay focused. So really taking care of that entire community is very important.
Thank you.
Then if all else fails, you just take a trip to the plant room, right?
The plant room, look out the cupola, yeah.
Okay, I think I saw another hand over here in the red shirt. We'll take this one.
Hello, I'm Niall, and believe it or not, I'm also an intern. I'd be curious to hear more about your experiences in training with the Dragon spacecraft specifically, especially given like the differences in background versus being able to compare it to like the shuttle and Soyuz versus being like your first space flight, like how that maybe affected your approach the training with spacecraft, the Dragon spacecraft, especially considering that SpaceX has kind of been very innovative and kind of departed from tradition in many ways, at least from an outside perspective in the space industry.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, training specifically on Dragon, I trained for many years on Starliner, which is the Boeing spacecraft, and I was originally assigned to CFT. After many years of delays, I switched over to SpaceX. So it was a very unique opportunity for me to be able to compare those spacecraft and those training kind of systems side by side. You're right, as SpaceX is highly automated. And that's incredible because the amount of training that we need to have on that spacecraft is much less than you needed to have on legacy spacecrafts. The level of understanding that you need to have is different. It's the level of understanding and in depth on the technology and the automation, what the computer systems are doing, not as much on the hardware of the spacecraft. To be honest, you can't even access the valves, you know, and there's not a lot of manual overrides. So that's very different. I think moving forward, that's the direction that we need to go. You know, Koichi talked about on shuttle how people were trained for specific tasks. I mean, if you were the pilot or the commander, that was your main task. Now everybody's trained same across the board because you don't need to spend an extraordinary amount of hours learning to fly the spacecraft itself. So I think that's an important concept as we move forward to the moon and eventually to Mars. It's going to be interesting, this relationship between human and computer system and where we find that appropriate balance. We have learned as the pilot, even though it's highly automated, the computer can do everything, the computer can still screw it up because a human coded it somewhere, or there's a situation we didn't think of, and now there's a glitch. So the commander needs to be able to go in and stop the automation and influence the automation. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in trouble if we put too much faith. So where that level is, that's going to be the fun part as we look towards the Artemis program.
Okay, I think we have time for just a handful of questions. I see this hand over here, and then sir in the back will go next.
Hi, my name is Summer, and I'm working on the commercial crew program. My question is regarding the sleep cycle. Are you able to sleep good in space, and how are your dreams affected, or have you seen a change in your dream cycle?
So as far as my experience goes, since you know, we sleep shift in accordance with the launch time of any spacecraft, the shuttle or Dragon or Soyuz. So by the time we launch, we're really fresh in mind. And then, so the launching part is okay. And then as soon as we arrive on the space station, then we will switch to the Greenwich Mean Time. So depending on your you know, launch time, it may be a long sleep, or usually it's a longer sleep as soon as we arrive on the space station. So during the few days on board the space station, you know, I could feel some jet lags, but after that it was very smooth, and zero gravity is a very comfortable environment to sleep in. You don't feel any pressure in any part of your body, and you can float, and it's so comfortable to sleep in. So as far as sleep shifting and then you know, adjusting to the new time over the space station, it was not difficult because you know, they give us plenty of time to get used to this new environment of zero gravity after we arrive. So.
Hi, Jared Bonsack from Lockheed Martin on the RAN program. Question for Nicole. Your Twitter handle is Astro Duke. Just want to know if there's a story behind the name Duke.
Sure, so Duke's my call sign from the Marine Corps. So all fighter pilots get a call sign. Usually in the Navy and the Marine Corps, they're making fun of you a little bit. In the Air Force, usually it's like Thor or Spear or something like that. So for me, my call sign's Duke because I walk a little funny, you know, like this, kind of like John Wayne, I guess. So it's the Duke after John Wayne. Could be a lot worse.
And I think I saw there against the back wall, we have a question, Mr. Honeycutt. The back wall.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Tyler. I'm also an intern this summer for the plant biology section here. Just wanted to ask you guys, we talked a lot about lowering your mental capacity to like relax. In a situation where you have like, let's say, fuel, or a cooling system leaking, what do you do to kind of get yourself into that ready state, or that, trying to capture that electric between your team members and brainstorming?
No, to get your mind moved. So I think what you're asking is like, so in an emergency scenario, for example, so we had, one example is that we do outreach to schools. And so I was doing a video conference with a school in Columbus. And so I'm talking to school kids, they're all answering questions. And Josh comes floating down. And so I have the ATUs turned down so I can't hear anything. Josh comes floating by fast. And he says, we have to shelter in place immediately. Like, we're gonna get hit, station's gonna get hit essentially, right? And this has only happened, a lot of times we'll have a conjunction, the station will move or we'll be aware of it, but this is a case where it's late, you need to get inside Dragon, close all the hatches, and then just hope that you're really small and you don't get hit. And so I think actually sheltering in place has only happened maybe one or two other times. But a major emergency, so boom, you kick right into action. We get everybody, we get in Dragon, we're throwing the cargo out of the way, all the hatches closed. You don't really need to think about it. You're trained so well on it, you just execute. And so we got inside of Dragon, unfortunately, it got called off, like the debris was not going to hit us and we were okay. And then so once that call came up, we opened up all the hatches, and that's when, now your heart rate's up and you're like, oh my gosh, like that was a real emergency. Wow, that's crazy, you know? And so we're kind of like talking about it. Ground comes up and they said, hey, that school is still online. Like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes later, right? These kids are still online waiting. And I was like, oh. They said, you can go continue, we'll give you some extra time if you want to continue with your questions. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, get back in high school. And so I go back and I'm still kind of like amped up and I think they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, what happened? And I come back and they're like, yay! And this girl goes, okay, what's your favorite food? Okay, my favorite food, you know? And you're like, so you just like, you just shift back and forth. You've got to be able to do that.
Oh, what is your favorite? Let's see, I think we have time for 2 more questions. If you would mind just putting, okay, we'll take 3. We'll take back row, blue shirt, and then the right of here.
Hi, my name is Charlene. I'm an intern at West Carolina, and this is for Nicole. I'm working on a team with Jamie Cornejo and Joel Velasquez. We just also wanted to say hi and that they're happy to see you, because they saw an email and they're like, oh, go tell them that we said hi. And I'm like, okay, gosh. So I'll say that. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's been wonderful, and it's just a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then a right here on the row, blue shirt with the black sweater.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I work with Boeing on the SLS Artemis program. And my question is for Nicole, with Crew 5 being your first space mission, what do you look forward to the most for the future of Crew spaceflight and the lunar Artemis missions too?
Gosh, there's so much to look forward to. I mean, it's crazy times right now. I remember just a decade ago hearing about Commercial Crew and the expansion of all these companies in low Earth orbit and Artemis, before it was even called Artemis, right, to the moon, and it seems kind of like far-fetched future concepts, and now here we are living it. It's incredible. And so I think the opportunities in low Earth orbit will continue with the extension of space station. Really looking forward to going back to JSC now and supporting those missions. We have Crew 7 launch coming up. Jasmine, another Marine, will be commanding that spacecraft. So we're really looking forward to supporting that crew on board. And then, of course, the Artemis program, with Artemis 2 crew already being named, and hopefully those missions will continue on a regular cadence. And so I'm sure we share the same excitement. We don't know exactly where the future's going to go, right? There's big ideas and concepts out there, but you're already seeing the involvement of our international partners with the Artemis Accords, all the commercial crew, all the lander contracts have already, been awarded, and so the next decade is going to be pretty cool.
That's awesome, thank you.
Okay, and then our final question up here.
So final question that's a little bit nerve-wracking on my end, just letting you know. Very quickly, for Nicole, I actually met you when I was at Pax River, and you were a fighter pilot, and we used to have a lot of lunch together because we did a lot of outreach for like the flight simulators and stuff. So I remember.
I do remember that. What was it called? Was it
Starfleet?
Starfleet.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
cool.
so we were supposed to have lunch, and I think you were like, oh, I'm traveling for work, and then I think a few months later you were named as an astronaut. So I thought that was pretty neat and pretty cool. But the last question being, you trained for your EDA at the NBL. Was there a lot of simulators when you first trained and first did your EDA? And is it something that when you look back that the training was pretty accurate when you actually did your first EDA?
So training in the NBL, we spend hundreds of hours in the pool, and it's a great training. It's incredible. There are some major differences. The one being that you have the stability of the water. That keeps you really from moving around a lot. As opposed to in space, the first time we came out of the airlock, Luigi and I were on the first EVA. He was EV1, so he came out first. I came out second. And in the NBL, I always grab on, you come out, and you do this little like shakedown because it settles you in the suit and just stabilizes you, and then you're good to go. So I come out of the air, in space, mind you. I don't know why, but I do this little shakedown, and I just go, and I start swinging. I'm like, oh, you're like a little flag on top of an arm, like this ragdoll. It was amazing. So you really needed to stabilize yourself and just light touches everywhere you go. Whereas in the NBL, to get moving, that big heavy suit, you got to get moving. You don't want to do that in space because you'll get moving very easily, but then it's very difficult to stop yourself, especially kind of coming around. Additionally, in the NBL, there's still gravity, right? So if you're going to be upside down, you're still on your shoulders. You still feel that blood rush to your head when you're upside down. In space, none of it. So you really have that ability to approach something from different angles. So translating, I found, was much more easier in space, and I can control what plane I was approaching it from because I didn't have to deal with gravity. So the training is wonderful because the NBL teaches you to adapt to that environment and to deal with the frustrations of, I have this hook, it keeps falling to the ground. It's not going to happen in space, but in space, I touch it, it's going to fling away, and everything's going to be everywhere. So that's a frustration that in real time, you have to learn how to adapt to it and just deal with it as you go. And so I think that's one of the best things that the NBL teaches you.
In addition to that, in NBL, usually we have good lighting. In space, half of the time we're in, darkness. So when we were working at the end of the world, at the end of the S6, it was, wow, this is so not visible. You could not see the safety tether, and it's so kind of scary in a sense. But training in NBL gives us all the opportunity to cope with any difficulties. So we have a really great training facility there.
Thank you so much. I'd actually like to open it up to you guys to see if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share today, just to kind of close out this amazing experience that we've had.
Well, for me, it's always a pleasure and honor to be back at the KSC. I still remember my first flight on the Space Shuttle Endeavour when I was in high school or something. But anyway, it's been over decades, and then each time I really appreciate all the help that you provided to the crews. And I was very fortunate to be able to come back here as the crew member flying with Nicole on the Crew Dragon. And next flight is coming up, and I hope to come back here as much as I can. I hope that to see this growth of the commercial crew program and then the Artemis program. Japan is a partner of the not only the space station program but the Artemis program. We will be providing an ecosystem through the gateway, and also logistics supply, and we're now under the development of new pressurized rover on the surface. And I hope to see Nicole driving the Japanese rover on the surface of the moon in the future. I'll be waving at her from the ground. And so thank you very much for your support, and it's my honor and pleasure to be back here. Thank you.
Each time, we come back to KSC, it's fun because there's so much going on at KSC, with the payloads folks, with Artemis, with SpaceX, with Starliner. It's always so interesting how many different groups of people are working on things, and their interns as well. This is a great place to get some of that experience. And so know that when we're on board, we understand and we realize how much work and what a huge team of folks it takes on the ground, from the contractors to the engineers to the FRR folks, to get everything together to launch and to launch safely. And that is the biggest thing. The reason that we feel comfortable and when we launch to space, we're not nervous, we're not scared, is because we know when we're sitting on top of that rocket that the team here on the ground has done everything they can to make it as safe as reasonably possible. And so from us and from our families, thank you so much for that.